Hello and welcome to Clydebridge Station. The 80s were a great decade. I grew up as a child in the 80s. Channel 4 launched in 1982. The 80s was the golden era, in my opinion, of ITV presentation and continuity. That's the bits in between the programmes. ITV Schools on 4 launched in 1987. The same year the very first Rugby World Cup was held. New Zealand beating France 29-9 in the final at Eden Park, Auckland. Scotland won the Grand Slam in 1984. Jockey Wilson won the World Darts title on 2 occasions. And sectorisation on British Rail took place. In the latest on our sectors in detail videos, I'm going to be taking a look at the London and South East sector, which became Network South East in 1986. I'm going to tell you a bit about the sector, and we're going to tell you how to model the sector as well. Last year I did do a video on its 35th anniversary looking at Network South East and the actual brand itself and what it done. So I do apologise in advance for going over some old ground here, but I sincerely hope that you appreciate that it's for completeness sake. LSC, the London and South East sector, was one of the 3 passenger carrying sectors of British Rail created on the 5th of January 1982. Its operating area was vast, but it mostly comprised the southern region of British Rail, including the Isle of Wight, and something like 80-mile radius around Greater London. The London South East sector's operating area extended as far as Manningtree and Northampton, although their services did go as far as Rugby. Out west, the territory stopped as far as Exeter Central. When the London and South East sector was created, it was based initially at Waterloo, although it later moved to Euston House. And the sector itself, like the other business sectors at the time, didn't employ any of the drivers or station staff. These were still employed by the regions, who were paid by the sectors to do what the sectors wanted. Indeed, the LSC began with just a team of 30 people directly employed by the sector, and these were based at Waterloo. The London and South East sector had an initial livery which came out in the mid-1980s, late 1984 to be exact, and it was termed the Jaffa Cake livery. Colin Duff from the Southern Region email group has kindly supplied 3 photographs which contrast between this livery and the original Jaffa Cake livery. The Jaffa Cake livery had a slight revision, and you'll notice that when you see the 3 photos. The one with the Essex Express branding was applied to the Clacton units. That's the Class 309s that operated on the Liverpool Street to Clacton via Colchester service. And indeed these were the only units that carried any sort of branding on their livery, whilst the sector was known as London and South East. The slight change in the livery is the orange band. There were 2 thin black bands put above and below it later on, and it got the nickname the Jaffa Cake livery. If you think about a Jaffa Cake biscuit, chocolate on top and bottom, and the orange in between. No locomotives and no locomotive-hauled coaching stock nor any diesel multiple units ever gained the Jaffa Cake livery. It was only applied sporadically to the Clacton Express units, as already mentioned, to some Class 419 motor luggage vans, and also it was applied to some of the Class 411 4SEP units that were originally ordered for the Kent Coast electrification, but following the arrival of more modern units onto other services, they were transferred to the Charing Cross to Hastings via Tonbridge service, when that service was electrified in 1986. Not long after the initial launch of the new electrified service between London and Hastings via Tonbridge, a new livery was unveiled and a new branding. The previous branding had just simply been called London and South East, and indeed a TV advert does exist for a special away day ticket, and it just simply says valid in London and South East area only. When Chris Green was moved from the ScotRail operations of Provincial to become the Sector Director of Network South East, he launched a new campaign called Operation Pride, and with it was to be a brand new livery. Although seen for the first time by a group of enthusiasts at Plymouth on the 1st of June 1986 on 50017, without any branding, and likewise at a naming ceremony for 47573 at Liverpool Street on the 9th of June, it was the 10th of June when the new Network South East branding was launched. The toothpaste livery was liked by some, others thought it was garish, but had the desired effect, everyone noticed it. The Network South East branding also included the famous flashes, which, as you can see there on that map, to coach. That was what that was called, the flashes. The Network South East livery, there we go, also was applied not just to locomotives, but was going to be applied to everything, including the NSC snow train. There were all sorts of engineering vehicles carried NSC branding, and perhaps one of the most unusual locomotives, if you call them locomotives, to ever carry Network South East livery were 97707 and 97708. These were the former Class 501 electric multiple units that had been converted into battery locomotives for engineering operations on the Great Northern Electrics into Moorgate. They were certainly, as I say, the most unusual vehicles to carry NSC livery, when really they were departmental stock. You'll notice here at Clydebridge station we've got these red lamp posts, and I'll tell you more about that later on. Network South East, as I say, had a vast operating area, and the NSC area saw trains go as far north as Ipswich, although the boundary of Network South East was actually at Manningtree. The boundaries were also at Hitchin, Rugby, and as far west as Exeter Central, although trains of course did go on further than that. There's a link actually you'll see later on, there'll be a few videos linked in this video, and it gives you an ideas for modelling for Network South East and explains a bit about the NSC area. And one of those is Welcome to Network South East, made at the time when regions were abolished in 1991 and the sectors took full control of the staff and the tracks and the stations. But what I would say is that the Network South East area at the time, and indeed what was the Network South East area, comprises a huge, vast urban sprawl with the population of Australia. Now just think about that for a minute. The population of Australia, that vast, huge country, lived within the Network South East area, such a small, tight area. And it could proudly boast that a train would leave central London, arrive in central London every 11 seconds. Network South East operated as 10 main divisions. I'm going to try and remember them all here. So there was South East, South Central, South West, Thames Link, West Anglia, Great Eastern, North, Thames and Chiltern. There are probably others as well which I can't remember. Anyway, that's the ones I can remember, but there's a video on there that tells you all about it. Network South East was split into various operations prior to privatisation, but the Network South East branding was still in existence for many, many years. And I'm very pleased to say that the Network South East Railway Society exists to ensure the continued preservation of the Network South East brand. It has a dedicated website and Facebook page, and the NSERS regularly attends shows in the Network South East area, and their website is linked below. What I would also say to you as well is that their honorary president is Chris Green, the man who was instrumental in the creation of Network South East. And Chris, if you're watching, you're welcome to come up and visit Clydebridge any time, because I believe this was actually one of your locals when you were up in Scotland. So that's a bit about Network South East. So let's tell you about how you model Network South East. I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to show you straight away. One of the funniest things about Network South East was the red lamp posts, and it was actually a sort of trademark for Network South East. And indeed, these are getting installed here at Clydebridge Station as a replacement for these lamp posts. If you're modelling Network South East, do remember that the red lamp posts weren't at all stations initially. Obviously it took time for all stations to get done, but one thing with Network South East was that if a sign had to be replaced, they all got replaced to ensure consistent branding. Network South East stations would also have litter bins. Everything would have the litter bins, racks, signs would all have the Network South East flash on them. So you see the Network South East flash there. If I actually show you that sign there, it wouldn't have Network South East Clydebridge on it. It would just have Clydebridge with the Network South East flash below it. That was actually one thing. It was only the end boards it would say Network South East, welcome to whatever, let's say Network South East Hastings. But the ones further along the platforms would all have just the station name. The Network South East rolling stock, it's worth mentioning that I've not seen any rolling stock ever made for double O gauge that's got the LSE Jaffa Cake livery on it, and it was possible, as you would imagine, during the early days of Network South East, for rolling stock multiple units to have one in Jaffa Cake livery, one in Network South East livery. That is what happened. It was even possible for all three liveries, blue, grey, Jaffa Cake and Network South East, to be present on a train. In terms of modelling the actual trains themselves as well, locomotive hauled trains in the early days would have had all this in it. Would have had mixed livery formations. Do bear in mind that initially some of the NSC stock would have had intercity on it for locomotive hauled stock. Later on they would replace that intercity with Network South East. So blue and grey liveried stock did carry Network South East branding as well. The Network South East branding also extended to the Jaffa Cake stock, which did get the NSC, the Network South East branding on it. And all NSC locomotives and units would eventually get the flashes on their cab ends. Something that's not modelled much with Network South East stock, and again it's not something that you necessarily have to do, is that there was route brandings applied, such as West of England, Kent Coast, Waterloo and City. These were Wessex Electrics even, these were put onto the rolling stock. Some of the Class 50s did get the West of England branding, but none of the 47s did actually receive that. So if you do see a 47 on a layout with West of England branding, it's not authentic. When you're modelling Network South East stations as well, do bear in mind that there'll be signs that would have had "Thank you for travelling Network South East" in the buildings themselves, so they might not necessarily be visible. Network South East stations all had a London connections map. It was a requirement. It was put on when Network South East was created, that they had to have a London connections map at every station. Of course, when we return back to the rolling stock, we also have to remember too that sometimes celebrity locomotives haul trains, and we see 47628 there, Sir Daniel Gooch in Great Western 150 livery. 50007, Sir Edward Elgar was a regular performer on Network South East trains, although it's led to believe that Chris Green didn't actually particularly like this loco hauling his trains, and had to get special permission. Something else just to mention to you about the trains themselves as well is the depots that they get maintained at. Some of the depots would have had Network South East branding as well. So you would have seen your Network South East Clydebridge traction maintenance depot, for instance. When you're modelling third rail units on Network South East 2, it's worth remembering that the Network South East branding, from initially the units and the locomotives would have had a BR symbol. It would have been applied here on the locomotives in white, and it would have been on the upswept bit at the end of the units in red on the white section. Later on, Network South East from about 1990 onwards did not use the BR symbol. It was only the only other business sector not to use the BR symbol was Intercity after 1987. Initially the BR symbol, as I say, was applied round about here on locomotives. It was applied in various sizes. 47714 is a much larger one, which it later lost. The BR symbol was not applied to any of the locomotive hauled rolling stock, nor was it applied to the trailer coaches of multiple units, only the driving coaches. During the period when the Class 50s were suffering serious unreliability, and before the introduction of the Class 159s on the Waterloo to Exeter route, certain other locomotives were brought in to help out. Obviously, 11 Class 47/7s had been transferred in from Scotland when the Scottish Internal Services went over to multiple unit operation. But to assist in the locomotive shortage, some parcel sector 47/7s were drafted in, and these carried the parcel sector livery except 47706, and they actually had the NSE flashes applied to the parcels livery, and I'd like to believe that 47717 retained the NSE flashes right to the end when it was finally scrapped. 47706 had its battered unbranded ScotRail livery, but it too carried the NSE flashes. If you're fancying having a go at modelling Network South East, then you've certainly got a lot of options open to you. NSC is modelled quite a lot on layouts. If you are going to go ahead and build a third rail based one, do check out Ebsworth Street. Although not set in the NSC area, he's actually got third rail down, and it will actually give you an idea of how to go about doing the third rail. Now that's Greg Marshall who runs that. Also worth remembering too that with Network South East it was occasionally possible for units themselves to be formed of mixed liveries. This would occur because of accident damage or vehicle shortages, and I've seen a photo of a 455 with 3 coaches in Network South East livery and 1 in blue and grey livery. So it was obviously, as I say, possible to see those mixed livery formations on a single unit. If you're doing NSC depots as well, the ubiquitous Class 08 shunter also carried Network South East livery. 97800, which later resorted to its original 08600, is perhaps one of the most famous of them all, based at Slade Green. Straight Network South East livery was applied to it, as you see on 47701. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly of all, was the infamous Network South East bus. This was an open-top DMS Daimler fleet line that was used at certain events. I believe it's now scrapped, but it was used at certain events, and I believe that either Oxford Diecast or Exclusive First Editions actually brought out a replica of this bus several years ago. So that's Network South East. Obviously the whole vast history of the Network South East area and the Southern Region area, and I would advise you to go and look at the Network South East Railway Society website and the Southern Region email group website as well for further information. Both of those societies have provided me with assistance in the making of this video, and I do thank them very much for that. Now, if Network South East had all the big heavy commuter traffic, then the next sector we're going to focus on, Intercity, had all the glitz and glamour. And you'll be surprised to learn that it was actually split into several subsectors as well. Anyway, that's for another time. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that you enjoy modelling Network South East, if that's what you decide to do. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching, and bye bye for now.